I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie. Always doing crazy shit that worried my parents and friends to the point of near heart attacks. My favorite activity, and the one that was the most tame, was urban exploration. Sneaking into abandoned buildings, usually at night, and going wherever my curiosity and inhibition took me. Not a lot usually happened though. I would take some cool pictures, avoid cops or security guards. Sometimes I would even be out all night. One night in particular, however, has forever been burned into my mind, and it has rattled me to my very core. So much that it stopped me from ever setting foot outside of my studio apartment, or ever being in the dark by myself, ever again. The Celestial Valley Mental Asylum. On the outskirts of town that I called home, sat the largest abandoned building in Chesterfield County. It was also rumored to be the most haunted. It was a classic example of an overcrowded, understaffed asylum with piss-poor care ideals. Numerous stories about it have circulated over the years, usually to scare kids from going near it. But I never believed any of it. I thought it was all bullshit. As I got older, I constantly planned to make it yet another destination I visited in the dead of night, against the wish of literally everybody else in my life. March 29th, 2019. I had taken today and tomorrow off of work, since tonight was the night that I ventured into Celestial Valley. I slept most of the day, waking up around 6 o'clock in the evening. I ate cold pizza as a breakfast and I packed a small bag with my camera, granola bars, and a couple of bottles of water. Also my pocket knife and a small first aid kit and a flashlight. I also put my phone in the bag, as a last resort emergency call. I had had a few accidents in the past, so I knew to be as prepared as possible. After making sure I was well prepared for my overnight venture, I locked up my apartment and I exited the dimly lit complex. I got on my bike and I began the 1.5-mile trek to the decrepit asylum. 7:30 p.m. As I had hoped, I got to the dirt road just as the sun was hitting the horizon. I put one foot on the ground and I glanced at the withering wooden sign. The paint had almost completely chipped and peeled off, making it hard to read. I then looked down the long dirt road that led to the asylum. The building was once a brilliant, perfect white, but now spotted with rust and chipped paint. It was easily 3 or 4 stories tall, and was overgrown with ivy and some other foliage that had decided to make themselves at home on the outer walls. Most of the windows had been shattered, or covered with 2x4s. I was suddenly overcome with a sense of unease, which I quickly shook off. None of those stupid stories are real, I told myself. It's just another abandoned building. I biked my way up the road, finding a massive bush to hide my bike and jogging the rest of the way up. After searching for the better parts of 15 minutes, I finally found a way in through one of the broken windows. I threw my hair up into a ponytail and gingerly tossed my bag inside, before climbing up the ledge and jumping through the space. My nose was suddenly assaulted by the musky, dank smell that came with most aged buildings. But this was different. It almost smelled sickly sweet, like death. It made me want to vomit. I looked around, golden sunlight illuminating parts of the building. Clearly, I hadn't been the only one to sneak in here. Graffiti coated the walls like a quilt, all sorts of different numbers, symbols. I think I even recognized a few band logos too. What caught me off guard though, was the large symbol on one untouched wall. It evoked anger and malice, and would look cruel to even the most sadistic minds. It didn't really look like it was written with spray paint. Shaking my head, I picked up my bag and I decided to delve deeper into the building, going down the first hallway that I saw. It all looked like something straight out of a horror movie. There was the occasional gurney against the wall, papers on the floor. I couldn't help but roll my eyes a little bit. I glanced at the walls, which looked similar to the building's exterior. I had to admit, for all the horror stories that were told about this place, it was a little. And then a slam. I froze, eyes widening as I whipped around so fast that I actually got dizzy. Once I steadied myself, I was shocked to see the gurney a good 10 to 15 feet away from me now on its side, one of its wheels swinging gently from the impact. My brain tried to piece together what could have caused that to happen, but when it couldn't, I simply kept walking away. My feet picked up the pace a little as I removed my bag from my shoulder, pulling out my phone and putting on some music. Despite not seeing any cops or security, I kept the volume low. Anything to fill the void of silence and calm my pounding heart. 9:45 p.m. I've only just now found a staircase that led to the second floor. Damn, this place was bigger than I thought. At least I had gotten some cool pictures though. Nothing else too creepy has happened, aside from the occasional breeze creating an odd whistling noise. The sun has long since set, so I was using my flashlight to navigate the cobweb and mold-ridden duty halls. My music kept softly playing as I turned a corner, stopping dead in my tracks at what I saw. The hall looked strangely clean, pristine even. There wasn't a single speck of dirt and it was fairly well lit. But still, it remained empty, void of any signs of life. That is until I took another step forward. Suddenly the hall was filled with people, half of them restrained to gurneys. Doctors shoved patients around from room to room, some of them screaming like deranged animals. Those that weren't strapped down were trudging around like mindless zombies. It left me frozen with shock and confusion. What was going on? Hey! I managed, but it fell on deaf ears. Suddenly it seemed as if everybody was slowly filling into a different room within the hallways. Before I could call out again, all the doors slammed simultaneously. I jolted violently out to being startled, and I was brought back to a dark, damp, musty hallway. I looked down, noticing my flashlight was now on the floor. I reached down, picking it up and brushing it off with a shaky hand. Just calm down, Leslie. It must have been a hallucination from hunger or dehydration or something. I told myself, but it didn't sound very convincing. I decided to venture back to the first floor, feeling that I had done enough exploring on the second floor for now. 12:15 a.m., March 30th, 2019. I guess I did a fairly shit job of exploring this place. I walked into one room and it led to another series of hallways. Only they looked a bit cleaner, like somebody had been here recently. The feeling of unease suddenly grew exponentially, and my gut was telling me to turn back and get out. Wiping some sweat from my forehead, I took careful steps down the hallway, ignoring the feeling, constantly looking around me. Leslie, came a distorted voice. I whirled around, shining my light in all possible directions around me, but nothing was there. I huffed quietly in frustration, shaking my head and turning back to face the direction that I was heading in. My mind was clearly playing tricks on me, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. As I continued down the hall, I was caught off guard by an awful smell, one that I could only have recognized as the smell I noticed when I first entered this place. I made a face, feeling my stomach churn as I pressed on. I lowered my flashlight from straight ahead of me towards the floor, keeping an eye out for any dead animals that could be the source of the odor. I turned a corner, freezing. Ahead of me was a large room, but there was a light coming from it. I quickly shut off my flashlight and I turned off my music, putting the flashlight in my back pocket before carefully stepping forward. Worst case scenario was that it was the cops, and I could just book it out of here if it was. Suddenly I felt my foot step in something liquid. Confused, I looked down, seeing a dark puddle. I carefully reached down, sticking a couple fingers in it. It doesn't feel like water, I thought. Feeling bold, I shined the light on my phone on my hand. And God, I wish I hadn't. The liquid was dark red, and it didn't take me very long to figure out what it was. I felt my head spinning as I wiped the blood on my shorts. Why was there blood here? Was it an animal's, or was it? A tortured scream pierced the air. My head shot up as I recognized it was coming from the lit room. Okay, definitely not cops in there. I stood up straight, carefully walking towards the room as I pulled my knife from my front pocket. I flipped it open and I held it defensively as I snuck up to the doorway, hiding off to the side and poking my head in. I really wish that I had turned and left. The first thing I noticed were the numerous candles that adorned the room, and then I noticed the 5 or 6 hooded figures that all stood in a circle. They were speaking a language that I could only assume to be Latin, which sent a dangerous chill up my spine. The last 2 things I saw, and probably the 2 most haunting, were the pentagram and the girl laid in the center of it. She had to be no older than me, maybe 21 or 23 at the most. She had long blonde hair and she was naked, tied down to the ground with the pentagram carved into her flesh, surrounded by symbols that gave off a feeling of wrong. She trembled, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Please, please let me go," she begged. But her plea fell on deaf ears, the chanting slowly getting louder. I looked around the room again, spotting something that I hadn't noticed before. A massive goat's head, horns curling before pointing upwards. It was hung on the wall, the black beady eyes boring into my very soul. Blood dripped from the clean cut, creating a small puddle on the concrete floor. Another scream came from the girl, which ripped my attention from the goat back to her. I watched in horror as one of the hooded figures carved into her skin, but I couldn't see what it was. Her screams turned into shrieks and painful sobs, making my heart pound in my throat, tears of my own stinging my eyes. At the same time, I wanted to throw up. Finally, the figure moved, revealing the same symbol from the front carved into the poor girl's flesh. The room became filled with an aura of pure darkness, as crimson blood ran from her body and pooled at her side. Her skin was pale, tears continuing to flow from her cheeks, forming puddles on the side of her head. The chanting grew louder, and I felt the earth begin to tremble. I looked around the room, eyes going back to the goat. Its maw was now open, blood dripping from it. I felt my face drain of all color as I felt the head captivate me in its horrid gaze. "Leslie," it boomed, a voice deep and distorted like it was coming from Satan himself. I turned and I booked it away from the room, not giving a shit about how loud I was about it. I didn't bother to look back, but I could swear to God that I heard footsteps, or hooves, something chasing me. It only made my feet carry faster, skidding around corners until I reached the window that I came from. I leapt through it, tucking and rolling to the dirt with a grunt. I stood, looking behind me as I tried to catch my breath. I saw a dark, hulking figure running towards the window. It let out an unnatural bellow like it was trapped in the asylum, as I took off again, sprinting to the bush that hid my bike. I grabbed it and I hopped on, pedaling as fast as my feet would go. I almost crashed my bike 3 times before making it onto the road, speeding away from Celestial Valley Mental Asylum. 3:30 a.m. I finally walked into my apartment, the door gently slamming behind me. I turned on the lights before I collapsed to the floor, letting out a broken, pitiful whimper. The adrenaline was gone, and now it was time for the fear and shock to take over. My body trembled on the carpeted floor as tears fell, images of whatever the hell I witnessed flashing through my mind. What the hell? What the hell? I sobbed,